yeah, we can absolutely do a Digga D and Tion Wayne, but then go and score a Bridgerton or a Downton Abbey.
What was the moment where you got your big break?
Even still, I still don't think I've had that, because I'm still plagued by that. When I get my American #1, that's the big thing. Listen, at this space, I can be the main producer, I can be the co-producer, I can be the writer, I can be the co-writer, I can be the ears, I can be the advice, I can be the ingredient, but I can also be all those things at the same time.
That's the realness right there.
Bro, that is the realness of the real, man.
I'm Adrian Sykes, and this is Union Black, an online multi-format content series across YouTube and Google Arts and Culture, featuring a curated collection of videos, audio documentaries, podcasts, stories and photographs. Each series takes us on a journey celebrating the contributions of Black British music artists, creatives, professionals and scenes. Told by the Black British music community, these stories will demonstrate the undeniable influence and impact of Black British music and culture in the UK and beyond. Go check out all the Union Black content on Google Arts and Culture at goo.gle/Union Black. The Black British producers behind Global Album Series is a piece of 4 visualised podcasts that will spotlight a cross-generation of Black British music producers who've had international impact. On this episode, we're talking to the young and up-and-coming producer, KZ. KZ, thank you for joining us on this series.
Thank you for having me, man.
You've done some incredible music in your very short life. Nines, Stormzy, Wretch, Stefflon Don, soundtracks. You're a BAFTA winner. Right. We're going to get into all of that because it's an incredible catalogue for a man so young. But what I want to really dig into at the beginning is you. So let's talk about you growing up and your background. What was like for the young Kwei-Armah Jr.?
Honestly, it was a really. I had a childhood, and I'm very thankful that I could say that right now, because in the spaces that we're all in, I think where a lot of us are realizing and coming to grips with that, a lot of things have affected us from childhood. Yep. And I'm fortunate, and thanks to my parents, to giving me a pretty good childhood. But that childhood was pretty much steeped in art. It was art and culture and history and education. Those were the pillars in my house, and so whether we liked it or not, we was in that, man. My dad started off as a record producer and singer, and tried to do the whole artist thing, and went back and forth to New York. And so I got to kind of see I had a real grounding in, just the foundations of music, but most importantly, ambition, drive, and going for your goals, but also failure as well. I saw collaboration really early, with it be my mum, who's a fantastic architecture and painter, who was doing my dad's album covers when she was really young, and designing what the studio would look like and doing the tours, and that real hustle and bustle that I guess my generation kind of prides ourselves on. I got to see that in real time, and so being surrounded by both of them, who were formidable artists in their own right, but really, really educated people who made sure that I had to read every day, and whether I liked it or not. And that was a range of literature that I'm listening to. Whether they're talking to me about Karl Marx, or with them at the same time we're reading Malcolm X, and at the same time we're listening to Thelonious Monk. It's a real eclectic upbringing and household, but very much rooted in our culture. So both my parents are, like I said, formidable artists, and watching that, and then also having my aunt around, who was Karen Wheeler from Soul to Soul, and watching those guys tour. I remember being 3 and just 3 or 4 and just sitting at the front of the stage, man, and just watching them rock out and going, I don't know how I'm going to do that, but I'm going to do something like that.
So even at 3 years old, you were sitting and going, I could do that. Was music that clearly ingrained in you from an early age? Yeah. But did you really believe at that point that it was a reality that you could get that? Was it just that thing of, I like that maybe one day? I mean,
I had one of those really odd experiences as a child where the moment I became conscious And I mean, you know, who I was, where I was, my surroundings, I knew I wanted to do music. I mean, I was setting up a band on my bed, and it was only me. It was only me in the room, and I was getting, you know, I was somehow, how I did it, I have no idea, but like I was getting, you know, the old tape recorders, buying blank tapes from the corner shop, and just press and play and record at the same time to just record the vibe. And you know, I had no idea what I was doing, but I knew I just loved creating. But I also knew that I didn't want to be the thing in front. I wanted to be the thing that created the thing in front. And whether that might have been just, you know, from ethoses from my parents about, you know, how we control our narratives, how we own, but also how you have longevity in art.
But your dad doing what he did was very much up front. I mean, he was very much the man in front of the camera. You know, he transitioned from being the artist, the guy who wanted to be the artist, into an incredible actor, which makes me wonder why you wanted to be in the background when you could see your dad was kind of up there, kind of in front. I mean, normally it's the other way around, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I'm quite fortunate for my dad, because as much as he was in front of the camera, he would always tell me and give me stories, you know, from the front line, you know, about how artists would be treated, about how, you know, they actually didn't have the power, they couldn't make any of the decisions. I remember I think I was watching him on either on stage or on Casual, one of these things early, and I was like, why did you do that, Dad? Why couldn't you just? And he was like, I have no control over this. And I think I remember when he told me that, something just clicked.
Right.
At the same time, I was also seeing a lot of singers and rappers and artists as I'm getting older, kind of coming and going. And I was always puzzled by that, because I was just like, but these are really, really great people. Why? Surely they should be a Michael Jackson. They should be a so-and-so. And those things weren't happening. And again, my parents, you know, thanks to them, really instilled in me the understanding of ownership, but then, you know, of what positive control looks like. What I mean by positive control is going, if you are in a position where you can make a difference, that is where the real power lies. And then you can put other people on. That's how you create your ecosystem, as opposed to always being reactive or waiting for the thing to be handed to you. I think my strength, and I've learned that as I've kind of got older, has just been in, you know, being, I guess, the kingmaker somewhat, but also just trying to just make sure that I have as much control and ownership over the things that I do as possible. And for me, that started with being a producer.
How much of that culture, that sound clash, living in the UK, that melting pot, is in what you do today?
I'd say all of it, if I'm to be quite blunt. A lot of it, and I wouldn't say there are any main genres. Like, I love this thing so much that because of the kaleidoscope of music that I grew up around, I can't get away from, you know, adding a bit of folk guitar in an R&B record, or adding a bit of drum and bass in the soundtrack. Do you know what I mean? Just because it's like, look, these are the things that I love. This is the soundscape that I think works. And actually, guys, these things are a lot more similar than you think. But it's also been quite difficult to kind of get that across the line in my journey, because in this country, and, you know, being a person of colour who actually, you know, makes music, people like almost typecast you and pigeonhole you really, really quickly. So for a long time, it just had to be, you know, I was labelled as too musical, or we can't really figure out what direction it's going in, or maybe you need to kind of, you know, lessen your sound a bit more so it's a bit more concentrated. And there's merit to that, but there's also a stifling nature that, you know, came with that as I grew, because I'm like, well, I'm exposed to all of these sounds, and I feel like I'm a lot bigger than this place that tells me I should be this. How do we fit that all in? And it was trial and error. It was also, you know, a lot of no's and just a lot of, you know, struggles. But I feel, you know, people and music and just culture, like, stuff changes. It's a wheel, and you kind of got to wait for the timing to kind of hit. And there is a time where people can do that, you know, and I know that because those times they've come and it's happened. And it's also been afforded to other producers, you know,
Yes.
from other spaces where, and other, you know, cultures where they can do multiple things and multiple genres and multiple sounds because they grew up on, you know, Beastie Boys as well as NWA, as well as, you know, Red Hot Chili Peppers all together, and as well as Elvis or whoever. So my thing was always, I'm going to kind of put this in no matter what, because I can't do anything but be authentic to myself, but also still having faith that, okay, I've seen the likes of Quincy Jones do it, even though that seems super far ahead, but I still, that's my benchmark, you know? I see artists like Prince do it and they go crazy across the board, and, you know, yeah, they piss off the business people because they can't pigeonhole them, but that's exactly what makes them great, right? So for me, it's definitely right now in all of my sound, and I'm kind of grateful that, you know, people can not only digest it, but, you know, appreciate it for what it is. Being a successful producer isn't just about producing at all. It's knowing the business inside out, knowing your business inside out. It's learning about how you deal with people. That's one of the biggest things. I would see and sit and watch, you know, how either like Shah or Sonny or Lab would create an environment in the room that didn't have to have anything to do with music, but it was, do these people feel comfortable? Are you creating the space where they can be fully themselves? And then at that point, you can throw as many million ideas around to get to the hit or to get to the thing. For me, that was so crucial because, you know, you jump into the music thing, you think, okay, I'll make up some really, really cool tracks and that's about it. And I can send it off and I can send the beat into the door. I can write a song and keep going. Actually, nah, like these guys are successful, not because the talent is, they can do that in their sleep, but it's their interpersonal skills. It's them making sure that they are very aware of what's going on with their contracts and what percentages are going here, there and everywhere. It's creating the ecosystem around them to make them the powerhouse. And I said, wow, if I don't take that, respectfully, I will just be a beat maker. And that's, I mean, I play 7 instruments. I can't be that. That doesn't make sense to me. But in order to cultivate that properly, you have to have all of these other things around you. So yeah, I'd say that's probably one of the main takeaways I still keep to this day, if I'm honest with you. And I guess the ability to go, all right, cool, let's make a pop smash.
And everyone loves a pop smash.
Everyone loves a pop smash, man. I love it. Listen, I love a pop thing. I don't subscribe to all of this. I'm here for it. Let's go as top 40 as
100%.
You know what I mean?
100%. One of the things, I actually spoke to Sonny yesterday, which was bad. Spoke to Shah earlier on.
Yeah.
And one of the things you mentioned there, which Sonny mentioned to me yesterday, which I think is also important for producers, is that word culture, about building a culture in the room, understanding what the artist wants. How do you do that when you're working with your artists? How are you building that culture, that understanding, and that gets you to the point where you're making great music with them?
Well, interestingly enough, I've actually introduced, your son actually introduced me, and together we, you know, created this strategy where I meet people before I do sessions. I just have a conversation. It's a real human-to-human conversation as much as possible. If I know them already, we can get in. But before, if it's a new session, we'll meet for coffee, or I'll meet them in town, or they'll come down to the studio, and we'll just, you know, politic. We'll reason, and we'll just I'll get into their mind, essentially. I always like to say the producer is almost a therapist as well, because, you know, it's your job to kind of draw out, but again, create the safe space for you to be able to draw out, and also allow them to be themselves as much. So I meet people, I have conversations. Sometimes we'll have a 2-day session, and the first day there is no music made whatsoever. We're just vibing. We're tapping in, like, I'm getting into who you are as a person, and then what that does for me, that just gives me all of the information I need to then create the environment, because the session I was in 2 days ago may not actually be the fit for you, and I would kind of be shooting myself in the foot if I'm here trying to force you into that mode. Every single artist, every single session, every space has to be met. It has to be met as you find it. You have to meet them as you find them, and you have to, you know, I think one of the skills of, again, getting those things from F Block is being able to adapt to those different people in those different spaces. So, you know, it might sound quite simple, but actually a conversation does so much. And a conversation not about music. Who are you? You know, why do you like what you've done? Yeah, we'll do the whole how did you get here? That's the icebreaker. But it's, you know, what are the things you're into? ultimately one of my biggest questions I always have for them, and I don't necessarily ask them, but I just try to figure out is how well do you know yourself? Because you can, you have the artists who, respectfully, they've signed the deal, they're mad young, and they're just really happy to be here. But they don't necessarily know, or they've been given a direction, or they've been given an idea of what to do. And it's like, let's make a hit. Yeah, we can do that. What's your hit? Do you know what that is? Because what Becky G does isn't what you're going to do, And so that's what I tried to find out first and foremost, because if they, again, it just informs me. If they do, then we have so much room to explore and create and make mistakes and not feel a way about it and just, come to a sound. And if they don't, then I may have to either just draw from a blueprint and just do the job, and slowly but surely just help them, understand what it is that their sound is. Or, and I ain't got to do too much. It might just be like a gentle nudge. It might just be you should see so-and-so, or what do you think about this chord? It can be translated into anything. And so for me, it's I think those are the real skills, man. This music game is so personal, and it's so interpersonal rather, that a lot of people don't realize that. And it's especially more on the business side as well. It's like, bro, cultivating relationships, understanding people's temperament, and then finding the right canvas, to kind of fit that in on it. Yeah, it's a lot. I mean,
this might seem a crazy question, but how much of what you do is the music?
It's a great question, actually. So in recent years, I think it's now actually 50-50, meaning that a lot of what I do, and I wrote a tweet the other day where I was like, listen, at this space, I can be the main producer, I can be the co-producer, I can be the writer, I can be the co-writer, I can be the ears, I can be the advice, I can be the ingredient, but I can also be all those things at the same time. And
I like that.
I've seen that more and more. I get into sessions, or, I said I was building this publishing company, so I'm also seeing like a lot of that. And a lot of it, honestly, is really 50-50 right now, where it's like, people are just happy to have me in the room. I don't have to touch anything. Do you know what I mean? And it's like, all right, cool. I can do the melody to the chorus, or I can give you a couple words for the verse, or I can build the bridge, or I can build the beat, and that's fine. But how you got there is because of the conversations we've had, is because of the lunch or the food that I just put you onto, or because of the tea I've just given you, because you said, I've got a little tummy situation. We go, my mum did you get it? And it's like, and it's that, and it's the trust the artist has in me, or it's the feeling that they get. Man, we as a society, like, we're really pained. So if you can come to a space where not only you can be soothed, but you can be understood, that goes much further than whatever beat you can make, or whatever guitar lick you can put down, or whatever melody you can run. It's like, that person really values you as a human being, and that's the core of it, in my opinion.
But ultimately, you're still, at the end of the day, trying to get a great piece of music. For sure. So 100%.
And I think that naturally you can only get, I think through that process, you're either going to get good or great. And on top of that, I've done my 600 million thousand hours. So we're gonna, you
got the skills.
We've got the skills.
You've got the tools.
Let's be real. I want the number one. I want that hit money. I want that. So, and all of those things can be true at the same time. I can also want to have, a Billboard number one, or a number one album, or whatever, whilst at the same time genuinely caring about this person and wanting them to actually be cool as a human.
What was the moment where you got your big break, where you thought, okay, I'm in the game now. I'm here.
Yeah.
Can you remember that moment?
Honestly, if I'm being totally honest with you, and maybe this is just my abundant mindset, but I still don't think I've had that, because I'm still plagued by that. When I get my American number one, that's the big thing. And of course, I understand the need to unlearn that, but that's still a thing in me. But in terms of, maybe I'll slightly change language, in terms of getting notoriety and, having, a big piece of work, I'd say, truthfully, I would probably say 2018 to 2019, when I started working with Amaray, and then, interestingly enough, the pandemic was looming, and people in an interesting way kind of just dived into it and really jumped into the project. The project was top 20 on Billboard, and then, you know, Sad Girls then went extremely crazy and went mad on TikTok, and all of a sudden it was like people were like, oh, you're the guy. Oh, you do that? Absolutely. And then that kind of had a catapult effect. And then, you know, especially within this country where, again, sounds were changing. So like, Afrobeats was coming in heavy, you know. And prior to that, I had done Nines and NSG. So there was notoriety in that way. People were like, oh, you can do that? Cool, bet. Because before we thought you were just the musical guy, or you're just the guy who, you know. And I'd done bits before that, but it wasn't of the level of where it had impact, but also I was happy on the impact. You know, I've done smaller popper things where it was Professor Green or Rizzle Kicks or whoever, but in terms of what I loved, what I liked, and also what people were gravitating towards, when she came through, and it kind of went a bit crazy. And then, you know, off the back of that, as I said, the sound was changing in this country. So then, and then Koji came, and then he was finally at a point where people were ready to receive him in a way that it hadn't been done before. To the point where then we got nominated for Brit, also got nominated for Mercury, and it was just like it was like a snowball effect of things, man. So yeah, I'd say it starts with Amma, and yeah, it's a little cheeky plug because like I'm an artist, but at the same time,
if you can't big up yourself, who can you big up, right?
Big facts, big facts. So yeah, man, I'd say that was my moments when, you know, it was. Yeah, people kind of recognise me properly, you know. This is my peers included.
Talk through the process of finding the artist, being in the studio. Yeah, because working with an artist is a completely different concept to the kind of kiss and run of a session, or trying to come up with that one tune and then you kind of wave someone goodbye. So when you're thinking about working on an album like that, when it's your thing, start from day one. How's that looking from you when you're coming together, and what are your aims and ambitions, and what are you looking for?
Right. Well, I think it's probably good to start with a bit of context. Like I love albums. But I also love the art of artist development. I love, you know, I grew up with a mum who loved Motown, so she's telling me about how you build. You know, again, I'm coming from a family where it's like build and own.
Yeah.
You know, it's. Those are the pillars, man. Like I grew up on wanting to be Dr. Dre and finding my Eminem, you know, or finding my 50 or finding my whoever. That was all the thing in my mind, innit? And the way I looked at it, or Quincy or Michael, but he's got his rod there at the same time, you know. That's my thinking. So any artist I get into, that's always kind of been my mentality, even from school, man. Like I was trying to rope random people in like year 9, like, yo, you could be a 6 singer, come, let's go to the studio. Do you know what I mean? I'm just like, I'm trying to exercise that part. But so that kind of sets the stage, you know, for why I'm doing it. But how it starts is honestly, again, back to a conversation. Obviously talent is super important, but the conversation is also really important. Do our visions align? You know, do you have a vision that's inspired me to then want to go, oh, I want to be a part of it. Yeah. Or I want to put a lot of my resources into it, wherever that may be at the time. And so, it starts with that. And then once we're aligned on that, it's then about planning. It's like, okay, well, how are we trying to build this world? You know what I'm saying? Where are we going? And then after that, it's then who are the people that we bring in? And that's my favorite part, is kind of going, all right, you've entrusted me to EP this project, or I guess be your sonic leader.
Let's say EP, executive producer. That just for those who may not know.
Absolutely. You know, you trust me to executive produce this process, be your sound leader or somewhat. And it's now going, okay, cool, how are we bringing in the rest of the Avengers? You know, it's like going, all right, cool, who's the dope writer? Who are the writers that work with this sound? Who are the producers that work with the sound? Who are the features that might work with the sound? Let's brainstorm. Let's, you know, just... And then reach out and then bring them in. And what was beautiful about Amma is that, you know, I found her whilst I was at another camp, and she was so, you know, quiet and quaint and just quite understated. But at the same time, I saw so much power in that, you know. And I was like, usually the people who are like that are usually the most fire. And someone had been telling me about you for years because she's come from Ghana, which is my background. Right, and I'm like, all right, cool. Let me and if something niggles at me for a minute, 3 times, I have to pay attention to it because I'm like, okay, clearly something is giving me a message. Let me just go and listen. So I met her in the camp, and real shy, real reserved. I'm like, at first I was like, I don't know if you're actually messing with me, but cool. And then it was that thing where she hit me up, she invited me out to Ghana, and we just spent time. I, at the time, wasn't really doing much, and I could put all of my energy into this girl. And again, and so with the process, it was everything I stated before. But on top of that, it was, look, we want this to be a project with longevity. We also want, she's an artist with longevity, and also this is also kind of groundbreaking. The first black female queer artist from Ghana, West Africa, like. Bruh, we know. That is opportunity to not only just knock down some doors, but really make a statement and make a stand. And I couldn't get to that point if we didn't go through all those processes, which is like I said, finding the right people to match, and most importantly, our visions aligning, or me just willing to be in service of your vision. That's also what I think, partly being a producer is, which is also just being in service.
Let's explore that, because I think that's really important, because producing is very much a service industry to a degree. How do you manage that as well as trying to be a creative? Because there has to be a certain degree of kind of rubbing up, and I know from other producers, particularly when they get to a certain point, they want to be the dominant force in the room. So how are you managing your ego, in all honesty, and the feeling that you may want to go in a certain way where the artist may want to go somewhere else? How is that?
I mean, it's still a daily conflict, if I'm being honest with you. Like there are sessions where I get it wrong, and there are sessions where I'm quite proud of myself. I'm like, oh, you were able to kind of subdue your ego and allow. I don't think it's like a one answer to it, but I think for me, I'm always thinking about what's the biggest goal here? What's the biggest outcome, and how do we get there? And being self-aware is also a massive part of that. You have to know when your ego is getting in the way of the goal. And yeah, I mean, as I'm thinking about it, it's still, something which I'm still getting to grips with. But I know one of the main key things that that has helped me is just listening. Is actually shutting up and going, you know what, let me try that idea. And I think that's also why I like working solely on, well, not solely, but why I love working with artists and developing them and creating projects, because we have the space to make mistakes. Whereas when you're in the one-to-one sessions or quick sessions, it's like, do you know what I'm saying? And so in those sessions, it's like, well, how do I quickly check my ego when I don't agree with that idea, or I don't think that idea is great? And sometimes you just have to leave it up to I mean, if you don't believe in God, but sometimes you've got to leave it up to God. I kind of just have to be like, well, you know what? All right, if they want to do that so badly, let them do it. Because also, I may not know. And that's actually what it is. There are points where I'm telling myself, like, and this is on daily, like, I like to learn, but there are things I just don't know. So they actually may be showing me something that I'm yet to know, and what that friction is really my ego going, you just don't have that knowledge. So you're just going off the basis of what you think is right. But actually, you got into music really to continually push the envelope. That person could be doing that. Shut up and listen.
So you're talking to a young producer now, saying, I'm that person. What are the 3 or 4 things you're saying to them that you should be doing in a session with an artist outside of the music?
Yeah. Okay. So ask questions. Create a comfortable environment for the artist. Experiment. When I say experiment, I mean make mistakes within the session, and allow yourself to do that. And I think the 4th one is be confident with your ideas. Even if it gets shut down, still put it forward.
At what point are you comfortable kind of going, I can put this down as a piece of music? And how do you check yourself to not go back and kind of have that fiddle? Yeah. Because, again, young producers will always want to kind of, maybe I can just tweak that. I can do a little bit here. So what's your point of...
It's funny because I think this comes with age and experience,
Right.
but even still, like I'm still a perfectionist, right? I still want to tweak but I think honestly, other people, like if I'm being real, it is the people that I trust around me. It's like, you know, Ash, it's some of my other, you know, really close musical family who I'm like, yo, just what do you think of this? But to get to that point of where I'm ready to send it to them, the indicator of that is, okay, you are running out of ideas and you're tired. And also now you're just adding loads. Now you're just doing too much. And I can see, and maybe that point is when I can see I'm doing too much. And if it's changed the initial vibe of the song, then I'm like, no, you've gone too far ahead. So I need to actually just be like, you know what? I don't have this one. And send to someone, and they can be like, oh, this is what you need to do. And I'm like, oh yeah, duh. I was just so in it that I couldn't be as objective as I needed to be. So having, you know, ears and people that you can trust is important. I mean, that can be both inside the industry and outside the industry. You know, like I have the people I trust inside, and I've got the people who I just play stuff to if they're riding around in a car, and I just see their reactions to it, and that can just, even the small nuances in body language can just tell me, oh, all right, cool, they moved to that part. They moved to cool, bet.
So that point of reference about just watching how people react to music is a real key ingredient of getting it right, because
absolutely. Because people give off responses that they don't even know they're giving off, right? So if you can get someone's most honest, authentic response and you can see that, then I think that's a major key in you've got the song right. It can also be a major key in you've got the song wrong.
Of course.
You know, like people used to say, if there's an A&R foot tap that apparently they used to do, and if they're doing that foot tap unconsciously, you've got one, or you've got a massive record. And, you know, of course, it's funny. It's also partly true, but when you look at it in terms of the people that you're servicing the music to, that's your audience, man.
Yeah.
If, you know what I'm saying? If they're moving, they have no clue what went into this. They just like what they hear, or they don't like what they hear, or they react to what they hear, or they don't react. You know, we're in this space now where I guess a lot of people are trying to figure out how you engage with passive listening and how you make that passive listening active listening. And I think a lot of that stems down to, of course, marketing and all that other stuff, but when you get to the root of the record, it's the ingredients that you're putting in there. Of
course.
You know, it's the honesty that you're putting in there, or lack thereof. And so I think paying attention to those things are like, it's key. It's key. Like I think, you know better than anyone. You can tell when someone is just kind of, my friends, kind of bullshitting you through the song, and when someone is genuinely like, yo,
it's the one.
This is the one.
Yeah.
Or even if it ain't one, like, this has done something to me. This is great. We got to finish it. We got to get that person on it. And I love that. I had that the other day where, like, I made the most, as a means that I was in with two really great producers, and it was the last record of the night, and everyone was tired and whatnot, right? And it was so simple. And before that, we made like 4 other records that were just like, you know, it was lit or whatever.
It was complicated.
Exactly, complicated, on brief, off brief.
Yeah.
And it was the last one, and it was so simple. And it was crazy because, like, if I do say so myself, that was an absolute smash. Like, and we were all, and literally, I mean, to the point that the next day, like, there were so many conversations. Like, I woke up to like emails and like people going, "Oh, so and so sent me the record," and I heard it, and I was like, "Wait, what?"
It's that big a tune.
It's that big a tune.
Love that.
Do you know what I mean? And I'm just like, okay, cool. So now all these things are happening with the song, and I'm like, well, that's interesting. We were conscious, but we weren't conscious of it. It was just feeling it, and we were just like, just doing the simple thing, right? And we stopped.
Yeah, I mean, I've always found, not wishing to kind of dive in, but that kind of visceral reaction to a tune, that kind of instant emotive response, kind of going, whether it's a head nod, whether you're jumping up and kind of going, that's the thing. You can't fake that, and and I think at that point you kind of go, okay, I know I've got one, and you have to leave it alone, right?
Listen, I looked to the left, and there was someone who isn't in music. I think they were either a partner of one of the people who were in the sessions, but they were there. I had absolutely no clue what was going on, and we had made multiple records that day. And, there were vibes. This one somehow had their attention, like in a way that it didn't have. The other ones didn't have their attention before. They could never figure it out. They were just like, "Oh, I really, really like the song," oh, I really, really like the song. And all little things like, you could be in your phone. If you're on your phone and you're just whistling or humming the melody, I'm like, okay, cool. Those little human nuances are key, man. Like, and they tell me a lot, especially within the session as well, you know?
Moving away from Amro for just a second, obviously the other one that everyone knows is Stormzy.
Yeah, absolutely.
That comes with a different criteria, a different set of responsibility, a different set of expectations. So walking into that session, how does that start for you? You know, you're going and doing Fire and Water. How?
Yeah.
Again, what's the first thing you're starting at? I mean,
well, the first thing, if I'm being totally honest with you, is nerves.
Right. Okay. No, that's that. But I think it's good to know because I think,
man.
you know, you're at whatever level you're at, there's always another level above you, right?
Absolutely. And I think that want to have that big or good cut, well, it's never going to go. Do you know what I'm saying? It's just about how much capacity that takes up of you, right? And so obviously I really wanted it. And a little bit of backstory, like I worked with Stormzy when he first came out. We did an Adidas campaign years and years ago. But since then, you know, he's just gone leaps and bounds. And just due to the nature of things, you know, like certain songs didn't work and we didn't really work as much as possible. But I'd always really wanted one, both culturally, but also it's Stormzy. So I'm like,
it's a big one.
It's a big one. So again, I think, and it was, you know, again, the Amore stuff kind of helps because it kind of catapulted me into spaces where people could look at more of what I do rather than the one or two things. And so I'm quite close to this A&R. He was actually kind of one of my mentors, Alec Boateng. And, you know, he's kind of constantly mentored me along the way and just kind of given me advice, always took a meeting and just, you know, it was great. And so I think at this point, a part of it was like, oh, maybe Kay's ready. So they sent me, we went to OC Island, which was the first time, mad crazy. My loco studio just on this middle of nowhere, but you're in the middle of the ocean, but you're on this island which only certain people live on.
Place.
It's a mad place. Incredible place. Crazy. Weird, but very, very...
It's definitely weird. It's definitely weird.
Absolutely. And like freaking Lucian Grange flew in the day before and stuff like that. It's just like, wow, all right, cool. Get there. Obviously, I see all like my peers and stuff, and it's lit. But there's an air of, okay, you're here, let's go. Do you know what I mean? And shout out to like, you know, Owen Cuts and Progression, who really, you know, who really championed me to kind of, you know, really be there and stuff like that. So, but I think that was really beautiful because there was actually no pressure. There was an environment created that people could just, you know, throw paint at the wall and see what sticks. And Storms was floating in and out of different rooms, you know, and at one moment it was me and Jacob Collier, the other moment it was me and Tendai, or it was me and Progression, or it was me and, you know, someone else, or it was just me and Storms. And you know, there's a wonderful writer and singer singer-songwriter called Debbie, who's signed to Def Jam. And her and I, we'd been just working like for about the past year, and she was at the camp and we were just in the room, and again, you know, we know each other, our stuff aligns, so we just vibed as we did. And a great guitarist called Jack Shepherd, he was also in the room, and we were just going round and round and round and just enjoying. And Debbie and I just, you know, I had a sample that I chopped up, and that was kind of on loop. And me and Debbie were just going back and forth, and you know, I just kind of had the word water, or pour me water, and fire and water, and this, that, and the third, and you know how it is, you kind of bounce off, and then Storms walked in the room and was just like, yo, what the hell is this? And then the rest is history, you know, and then we kind of just fleshed it out, and Progression came in and fleshed it out, and it was one of those really organic moments that I think everybody really wants in music. You know, especially, but I also had to manage the desperation of wanting to have such a massive cut, which is a difficult thing to do. But you, again, if the goal is bigger than the feeling at the time, right? So I always have to kind of go back to the North Star, and I was like, all right, I need to really tap into me, but also tap into just making. Like the environment called for peace, it called for love, it called for truth, it called for, you know, honesty, but it also called for fun and joy and like, listen, we're here, we're all lit, this is great, you know. And these are all things that I resonated with, and so it was kind of really just interesting to tap in, you know, and feel included, feel at home in a way.
Right.
You know, prior to that, feeling mad nervous because I'm like, yo, I just got to get this. By any means necessary, I'm getting this.
Let's talk about, because I'm really keen to get to two huge moments for you.
No worries, man.
You got to tell me about Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, because, you know, from a cultural and social viewpoint, I mean, as a black British producer, incredible moment, but as black people, a great moment. So let's discuss that first, then we'll go to even bigger heights after that, right?
Yeah, man. I kind of got to give, you know, thanks to definitely God and the universe. But man, I'm telling you, you invest in one artist and you believe in yourself and that artist. The amount of opportunities that come from there is insane. So again, we was in LA working on finishing the Amarie album, and we get a call that they want a song for the movie, but they need it like yesterday, and we're just like running around like, how are we doing this? And then honestly, we didn't even know if we could get it. Then the deadline kind of got pushed, and Ludwig Garçon, he I think reached out to us personally and was like, can you guys come over to Nigeria and just kind of just be in the mix, dude. Literally, and you can ask Ash this, like, I've never been so tired in my life, but I think I had to go. I had a meeting in New York scheduled with Tim, and
as Tim Blacksmith.
You
should say right now, for those who don't know.
So I had a meeting in New York scheduled with Tim Blacksmith. But then we had to be in Nigeria literally the next day. But the only way we could get to Nigeria was there was no direct flights from like LA or New York to Nigeria, weirdly enough. But we had to come to London to do that. So
fly from London out to Lagos.
Literally. Right. So I would say we got the call on the let's hypothetically say we got the call on the Tuesday. I was in Lagos on the Thursday morning. No, Wednesday night.
That's a madness.
Thursday morning, Wednesday night.
Yeah, that's a madness.
And how we got there, I could not even tell you. But straight from the airport to the hotel, ate maybe small plate of jollof. That's it. Quickly, straight to the studio or to the hotel where we were. Ludwig's there. A bunch of other people are there who were just really, really influential, both within the movie and within Nigeria. Chubbs, Sean, who's an incredible connector in general. But and we just, and again, like I said, for that, it was a similar thing where I was like, I have to get this. And
that one, I completely get. Everyone wants that one, right?
100%. And I'm like, Ludwig's in the room. I'm like, yo, this is kind of crazy, but I can't let it's kind of crazy get into my head. Let me do what I've come to do. And man, like, it was just beautiful bouncing off, my other co-producer Q, my Ludwig himself, Amma's there. Like, we've got some of the team on the phone just throwing ideas over, and it's a real super incredible collaborative, effort. But man, and I'm looking to the right and I'm seeing Ludwig look at us and like, oh, these niggas, they're a well-oiled machine. They're just going, and the questions, he's like, so why did you choose that sound? Or why did you do that? And I'm like, you fucking with this. You. But man, like, honestly, like, in the moment, I'm not thinking about anything apart from let's get this record or let's get 3 or 4. And then it actually didn't hit me until I left the session. It was crazy because my flight was again was it Friday or Saturday, one of the two. But I had a massive early flight, so I ended up leaving the session. So like a tiny bit early. I think she was there with the engineer and they just cut, but everything been written, everything that was dope. And nothing really hit me until maybe the next day. And I heard the record back and I was just like, yeah, it's fire. But it came along with, so this is going to be used for blah, 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 blah. It's going to be part of the trailer and this, that, and the third. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? And the first thing I did, I remember I called Dad and I was like, yo, Dad, da, 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 da. And he's like, super congratulations. Yeah. And in true dad fashion, he goes, and the costume designer, she's a really great friend of mine, and you should introduce yourself to her and blah blah blah. But
sounds like that.
It sounds like that. Yeah.
Absolutely,
literally. But honestly, man, I honestly say, like, in the moment, I felt like I was on autopilot because I just had the goal in mind, which was like, yo, we have to get this. Like, these opportunities aren't coming at random. They're coming because not only have you done the work, but what you invest in is and has paid off. And now, don't make it look like a fluke. Do it again and again and again. Apply the same tools and the same rules. Do it again and again and again. And man, honestly, I think that session was one of the probably biggest sessions where I could really look at all of the tools that I gathered and applied, and we got the result. And I was super happy about it, man. Like I was, when we found out, I was
a proud moment, man.
Very, very proud moment. Both culturally, as you said, and it's very rare that you can, in my opinion, that you can see something culturally and commercially have impact at exactly the same time. And it be super, super huge, Of course, we've seen that in America multiple times, but coming from the culture, coming from here, and it's, a British producer, it's an African artist, and it's at the helm, of commercial commercial entertainment. No brainer. Yeah. No brainer. Yes, and there were great songs that came from there. There were bigger songs that came from there, but just to be a part of that, just to be in it, to kind of look at, my name alongside some of the other people and just, hear some of the music in the movie and look into it on the soundtrack, I'm just like...
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like, all right, cool.
We're rolling now.
We're rolling now. Yeah, we stepped into something. Yeah. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, we've done something now, but now it's even more important to practice self-awareness and diligence, because now you've got to go again, but also remain focused,
So talking about going again, I remember getting a call from my son some months ago going, Dad, I'm thinking about going to the BAFTAs. And I was like, why? And he said, well, KG's up for a BAFTA. And I was like, okay, this is big.
Yeah.
And not only were you up for the BAFTA, you did something that I don't think any other black British music producer has done. You won.
Yeah, man.
First of all, we have to say congratulations, because it's an incredible moment. I'm immensely happy for you. Immensely happy for my son. I can't tell you
course,
as well.
Bro.
But let's talk about mood, and let's talk about, there's a massive journey to get to stand on a stage and holding that trophy in your hand. What happens when you get that phone call?
Well, which one?
Well, the one for mood. How does that start? How do you kind of...
So, again, being in a space where, and it's so funny because, like, I was, I'm really trying to get into soundtracking and scoring properly, but really pushing the envelope of that. And, prior to that, I'd done little bits of work, on Top Boy. I'd done some stuff on Fast and Furious 5. I did some bits on... I'd done adverts, I did an ads advert which ended up going viral and whatnot. And, I've done bits, but to really get into that space was really, really difficult. And it's, again, like, I was... Getting that phone call or getting that email, should I say, was even at a point where I was just like, what the hell am I doing next? And so it's funny because it felt like a desperate time, and then this came into it.
Okay, let me stop you.
Yeah.
Why did it feel like a desperate time?
Okay, so one thing, if I'm being honest with you, I feel like being a black producer in the UK does sometimes is that you have your little windows, or you have your moments, and you can kind of feel suffocated a bit, and there can sometimes be that crabs in the barrel mentality. And so you're kind of looking left and right and like, okay, what am I doing? And so when you have that, what you're doing, but you also got a kid to feed, and you've also got a house to pay for, and all that kind of stuff, you're just like... And it doesn't mean nothing bad at that point, but you're now thinking, okay, what does the next 6 months or to a year look like? What's really going on? And interestingly enough, the pandemic was what was about to come. So it was just like... Whoa. So I get the email, and they were just like, yo, we've got this this really, really interesting writer, actress, producer who is writing the show about the music industry and sex trafficking. We'd love to come, your name's been brought up a couple of times, we'd love to come in and speak to you about it. I'm like, admittedly, I'll take it. Let's go. Whatever it is.
How much you pay?
Yeah. I'm like, let's go. And then Ed Bailey from Leland Music ended up coming down. He's an incredible music supervisor, and just his demeanor and the fact that, you know, he was a music creator, but also was able to have, he was multidisciplinary, where he was able to be a music supervisor, but also like make music. And, you know, he comes from that world, but also comes from publishing. And so he's got a really extensive knowledge about, you know, dub and reggae and a bunch of other genres, which I'm like, I already took to him, and I was just like, you're super dope. And he explained to me the story, and he explained to me what she was doing. And, you know, I'm a massive fan, you know, of people, of just multifaceted talents. You know what I'm saying? People who like polymaths, people who can just do more things than one, and do it and defy what, you know, society or the industry has, you know, tried to compartmentalize them into. And so he told me about this girl, and I was just like, this sounds insane. You know, she sounds like what my nan did when she came over, when she just had to teach and work at the hospital and childmind and bloody blah, but all did it in an incredible way, earned great money off it and bloody blah blah. You know, whether it be dad being an actor, director, producer, ex-musician, but doing it all together, whether it be mum being an artist, architect, teacher, you know, and an author, like multitasking
to the max,
to the max, but doing it well, you know, doing it all on a high level and on of a great standard. And I saw a bit of myself in her, where I was like, hey, I'm trying to, you know, create and make all of these different sounds and trying to put them into one space and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you know, I'm being met with a lot of no's, because it isn't what's hot. And of course, there's an element to that I completely understand. Anyway, her and I met after that, and, you know, we met in a small burger joint in Kentish Town, actually. Tell stuff about Kentish Town, with Abby Leland, who's the head of Leland.
Yeah, I know Abby. Yeah,
Abby, phenomenal man.
Listen, everyone will know Leland music. Well, a lot of them because of the John Lewis advert every year.
Yes, of course. And like, but again, even just drawing back, the reason why they have that is because they really understand.
Yeah, they're incredible.
They really get it, and they've really done it. You know.
Yeah.
They've got their hands dirty.
Yeah.
Like I've got so much respect and love for those guys. Yeah, we met in a burger shack in Kentish Town, and I was somewhat unapologetically myself, and she was also unapologetically herself, to the point where she was super honest. She was like, yeah, we've met other people, and, you know, we're just going to see. And I'm like, I rate that. I rate that, absolutely. Yeah. And again, I think it was that thing we spoke about, you know, just being real, but also being interpersonal. On top of the fact that I would be lying if I didn't say, you know, having dad I had didn't help that. And I don't mean that in a nepotism sort of way. I mean that in the fact that because I was raised around TV, I was raised around theatre, I was raised around musicals, and these are things that, yes, I didn't go into directly, but I know them. I've sat in writing rooms. Do you know what I'm saying? I've seen composers build musicals from the ground up because I got excluded from school, so I had to sit in the room, or I was sick that day.
That's the realness, right there.
Well, that is the realness of the real, man. Or, you know what I'm saying, or the fact that, like, you know, dad was a busy man, but he still needs to make sure he spent time with kids. So it's like, hey, you're coming with me to here. So I'm going here, there, and everywhere, and I'm just learning. I'm soaking everything in via osmosis, and it's like, yo, this is clearly handy. And so with that, I spoke a language that I don't think anyone else that she'd met had kind of spoke. And so with that, it was you know, she took a risk on me, man. And I've never done anything like this before, but I was really, really, really determined to do it. And she believed in me, and I believed in her. And there's so many, you know, points of just us learning so many different disciplines. So because also this is a musical, right? So she doesn't come from a musical background, so I'm having to teach her and coach her and into certain places, and she's going with other people and picking up different, you know, ingredients and whatnot. And at the same time, I've never done this, so she's having to teach me about, like, you know, dramaturg and how we actually write for picture, and how the narrative or cues with the music have to be kind of specific to certain parts. And I mean, it was a phenomenal experience, because it expanded me, you know, it expanded her, and we were. You know, I was learning just different processes, and that was the big thing. It was like, yo, this is a completely different process, but this process is also very, very incredible. You know, like, Jesus amount of versions of how I had to do. Like, of course, we know about revisions and whatnot, but that's when it comes to the mix. Like, usually after version 3, A&R was like, okay, let's have a mix of version 2 and 3 and we'll put it out. We're good. This is...
You're going again.
We're going again. We're retrying. We're doing new words. We're going, yes, I know this word rhymes and it fits in a cadence, but it doesn't fit with the script. So we actually have to put this word in. And me, again, having to swallow my ego and going, that's to make the song good. And it's like, it's bigger than the song, K. It's a production. It's a, do you know what I mean? And it's like, okay, cool. This is interesting. So now I'm as I'm writing records in other sessions, I'm like, hey, just let's put that word in. That might explain this even more so, you know. And so it's me also bringing her into studios, and now this is my environment, and we're tapping in with the engineer, and I'm like, hey, how about you sound like this? And her sending me references and going, well, this is how we get to this place. And man, I've never had an experience like that. And no, it's stuff that I'm doing a lot more of these days. But so once we'd made all of the records, and most of them, you know, it was then how are we creating incidental music, you know, how are we creating the transitions and who we bringing in to kind of help with that. And that was, again, another learning curve, because I'm able to learn from Brian and see how he, you know, pieces together, you know, your I guess your typical score, but then how we're blending that with, you know, all of the ingredients that, you know, we've brought into the music, and really composing as opposed to producing. And so with that, man, it was like, it was a brilliant trade-off, because they were getting what they saw as, you know, contemporary, modern, up-tempo, really cool vibes for a show, you know, that I guess that had, you know, the makings of something really new, a breath of fresh air, you know, with a woman who wanted to really push the envelope, because, you know, you're giving how much money to a woman of color during a pandemic to make a show about music and sex trafficking, where she's also the main protagonist, and she's the writer, and she's the director, and, you know, it's like it's big, and it's a massive responsibility, and it didn't come without its problems, but my God, the way she handled it, again, it was just inspiration after inspiration, because I'm like, yeah, you're not taking no for an answer with this, and I love that, because this is your show, and this is your thing, and this is your vision, and you know what's also really dope about that is that I've got that in me. Let me back you up on that, because you're allowing me to not only just get new experiences, but I can do a pop record in the first episode, do a trap strip club record in episode 3, write score for Ep 2, do a Donna Summer cover for Ep 5, and flesh that out and see how that works, and, you know, create these incidental music while you're in the club. It's just like, it's such chaos, but it's beautiful chaos, and I thrive there, because I'm just like, yo, this is, I don't listen to the same stuff every day, bro. I don't watch the same stuff every day. I don't read the same stuff every day, and that is my character. That's my personality. And you gave me the canvas for that. I'm gonna absolutely salute you and back you up for as much as you need to. And I'll be real. Well, he had no idea where this show was supposed to go. Do you know what I mean? And, you know, during a pandemic, you can imagine the amount of start and stops.
Of course,
You know, and just her unwavering self-belief also just allowed me to also have even more unwavering self-belief, and just the confidence that you know, I was able to have. Plus, it was pretty good to have a bit of a job during the pandemic. I won't lie to you.
Listen,
man,
it's always it was a tough time there for a few of us, but, you know, to know that you had that thing coming in was great.
Honestly, and I could, you know, work out of the house and just be in my environment and be comfortable in it. Man, it was like, I really want to work at that a lot more. And so, you know, there was, of course, when you're working in TV, you know, there are goals. Everybody wants the BAFTA, or wants to try to go for an Emmy or whatever it might be at the time. But I think with this show, it was just, she really wanted to just put out something new that she hadn't seen before, and write it from that, you know, from that perspective, and also just be a powerhouse. And I align with powerhouses. I align with polymaths. I align with people who, you know, are just multifaceted and don't let the limitations of people and the lack of experience in people as well stop them from doing that, regardless of how much money is on the table, regardless of who's in the room. It's like, no, this is your thing, you're running with it, you know.
It must be a completely different sense of excitement hearing a piece of music you've created on the radio or through your computer to seeing it cut with visuals on the screen. How did that feel like for that first moment? You kind of like, you know, you go to a screening and it's there. Describe the emotion and describe what you're feeling.
I'm really proud. I'm proud. I'm also slightly worried because this is probably the first time a lot of people will actually hear and see me doing this stuff, even though I know I've been doing this, and how they're going to receive that.
Yep.
You know, am I now going to be put in yet another box, or is this going to be the thing to further actually just push the boundaries open so I can actually be who I need to be, right? I also felt another, like, you know, insurgence of energy into me to kind of go, oh my God, let's do more of this. You know, I'm like, oh, cool, let's go again and again and again because we're here. It's here now. Yeah. It's actualized. Do you know what I'm saying? It's real. It's real. This thing exists. Yeah. And I'm looking around at people. I'm looking at people who have been invited, and I'm just like, yeah, and you lot are messing with it? Okay, cool. This is it's
proper.
It's proper. I'm proud, but then also I'm like, and maybe to add on to the worry that, you know, directly in terms of just who I was maybe hanging around with at the time, this isn't necessarily the demographic that, you know, is going to consume this. But on the other hand, I bloody love that, because that takes me out of that space that I've been trying to fight out, you know, for a minute, where, you know, dare I say it, boy, Katie and Basingstoke can relate to something that I've made, and I'm like, live. Yeah. We have to come from the same place, but again, another testament to being multifaceted at that. And yeah, I felt like I said, pride, you know, joy, and just the energy to kind of go again and do it in on a much bigger platform, do it in, you know, a different way. You know, what's the next one? Am I going to score the entire thing, or is it going to be, you know, just original music, or is it going to be incidentals? Whatever, let's go, let's do it. I felt even more confident than I had been at the time, because I'm like, okay, like this is real. This is really, really, really real.
And the moment they call your name and you're a winner,
bro. Listen, it's one of those. Honestly, like I didn't think we was gonna win. I was even happy to just be nominated. I was like, yeah, cool, fine, great, you know. And again, it's like, it's good TV, but again, it's not something my demographic would watch. But there is a demographic who bloody loved it. But I'm not tapped into them like that to know if it's, you know. But clearly it was. But I was actually jet lagged. I'd come back from LA the day before.
Right. Okay.
I was.
Yeah, and I think I heard that.
Yeah. So I'd come up. I was in LA just doing writing and just doing a bunch of sessions and meetings and stuff. And I'd been there for about 2 weeks. And obviously, I find out in the gym, maybe like a week and a half prior or 2 weeks prior, that we've been nominated. Right. No, I lied. I'm lying. I'm sorry. No, I find out before I go to LA.
Right.
But I've still got to be there, and in my mind I'm like, cool, I'm going to fly back anyway. So the dates come in, and the dates have landed directly when I'm in LA. So I'm like, well, I just got to come back for it. Bought flights, got back, and
get the tux on.
Do you know what I mean?
Good.
Funny enough, I didn't even. Do you know what? Because everything was so like last minute with them. Like I didn't even have a suit ready. I'm like, I'm not about to wear the thing I wore before. So I had to call up my sister. My sister's incredible stylist and designer and seamstress and the whole nine. And I called Maya Scarlett, and she was like, okay, cool. I'm like, look, just please, let's just go somewhere, find something. I don't even mind what it is. But she put the outfit together in like a couple of hours.
Look fly. I
appreciate you, brother.
I seen you. It's all good.
She popped that together, bro. And I was like, okay, this is incredible. Again, even if I don't win, I look fly. Yeah, exactly. I got nominated. You know, it's like it's incredible. But the moment they said, and the people were like, oh, you guys are gonna win. I'm like, you guys, we're up against
Mick Jagger, Matthew Herbert. Yeah, I mean, some big names. If you don't know who Matthew Herbert is, go and look up Matthew Herbert, because he's been in the game a minute.
A hot minute. And to the point where I'm like, well, this couldn't possibly win against these titles, against these people. But great that we're even mentioned in the same breath as them, right? And then they announced it. And Clara announced it. And I even love the fact that Clara announced it, because she's there. There was a Vim she announced it with, and I was like, that's my sister. You know, that one there, you could see the smile on her face, because she knew, okay, this was the moment where this had kind of changed what British television and which British soundtrack would sound like for a minute. And she read it out, and I was like we were all just really, really baffed. But excuse the pun. But
no,
like,
that's all right.
But again, there was like an overflow of emotion kind of come over me. I was just like, that feeling of, oh, you've stepped into another level now. This is incredible. And but then mixed with an air of, I don't think anyone else has done this before. Insane. Mixed with an air of, everyone in here knows your dad, and they all see you and all looking at you, and they're like, what do they think? They might be confused because they're just like, how? And then one interesting thing happened after we got up on stage. Right, we won. I said the speech. I was still very baffed. I was like, yo, this is insane. Do you know what I mean? But every person of color came up to me in the room and shook my hand, and gave me that look they're almost giving me now. They gave me that look of, yeah. And I was just like, whoa, okay. No pressure, but pressure, you know?
It's really interesting because that look is not just pressure, but no pressure, but it's also about the fact that, you know what, you've done it. And, you know, you've done it it's not just for you, but, you know, everybody has a little piece of that BAFTA because they're super proud of what you've achieved, but also about what it means and where the journey goes next because, you know, it's really, I'm sure you've realised this, but, you know, you picking up the thing up and winning it has opened the door.
Absolutely.
It's opened the door for the next man. It's given, when those guys sit in the room, those execs, and kind of go, okay, we need a composer to kind of to do this program. Suddenly, the net is going to be much wider than it has been previously because of what you've done. Does that realisation there?
Absolutely, and I'm seeing it already to the point. I mean, I'm like, you know, thankfully, off the back of it, I've got like, you know, quite a bit of work off of it. But at the same time, I'm also hearing that, you know, some of my peers who I also know are equally, if not more, deserving and talented of this are getting it. They're into scoring, or they've been reached out by an A24 or a BBC or a Netflix to kind of, you know, tap in to what's going on culturally and put that into score. You know, like what the pandemic did was, you know, it showed us how much content everyone's consuming, but how much multimedia everyone's consuming, right? And with that, people want to see and hear themselves reflected in these stories. It's not just seeing, but it's going, oh, this scene works with this song because naturally that person would either be in that environment or it's really reflective of who they are. Oh, I just relate to it and I like that. And that song makes me feel like X, Y, and Z, you know? And so that I've seen so many of them, whether it be from, you know, Mellow Z to Swindle to whoever's coming in and you know, getting these jobs. And I love it because this all contributes to the bigger goal, which is going, guys, we're not a monolith here. We're not just one thing in this country anyway. Yeah, we can absolutely do a Digger D and Tion Wayne, but then go and score a Bridgerton or a Downton Abbey, or come and do a Mood and then do a Stormzy, whoever. It can all be done, and it can all be done well, and it can all be done by us.
That last part, I think, is absolutely crucial about the fact that, you know, there is a different sense of society and a different sense of Britishness about black people right now, and how much are you seeing that being embraced culturally and socially, and also recognised and for want of a better word, used within the context of creativity, particularly in your field of production? Because you said earlier on that sometimes you do feel restricted and stereotyped because of a look and a sound. You feel that the gates are opened and the arms are more accepting of people trying to do something a little bit different, or what they would expect them to be or deliver?
I don't know if the gates have widened. I just don't think we care anymore. We're just knocking it down regardless. If I'm being totally honest with you, I feel it's like, guys, we're going to do it because we can, and we have the mediums and the platforms to at least, you know, springboard us into these positions. So it's going to happen. Like, we're going to be here whether you like it or not, and we're going to produce quality. We're no longer going to sit in these pigeonholes and just wait for something to be brought to us. Like, if you're down to open the gates, absolutely, let's go and collaborate. But for the most part, and you even said it, I think even off camera, it's like, there's now 100 of us behind me. So we're coming regardless, you know? So yeah, that's I think it's been widened slightly. I don't know if it's widened because, someone has had, some great morale and therefore they're like, oh, we should, make it more accessible, or you just have to move with the times and you have to by force get it done. So either way, like, we're here regardless,
And do you feel that the sound of what you're doing is appreciated and recognised, not just here but worldwide? Are you seeing that acceptance from our, obviously America is the big market, right? You've had amazing success there. Are you seeing that embrace and that desire from our US compatriots to kind of go, you know what, I want some of that? What those guys, give me some of that flavour.
I think absolutely, man. I think, when you look at the impact of Afrobeat, when you look at the impact of, Latinx music, when you look at the impact of just different content, both drama and, even whether it be from Top Boy to even Mood, it's like the Americans are really, soaking up a lot of these different cultures and these different peoples because, times change. It's the changing of the guard, and naturally, some people still want to be involved in it. It's about how do we learn what the rest of the world has been doing for a minute, and. As I said, technology's made everything so much smaller and so much more easily consumable that you can't hide away from it. And I think also the growth in local music being huge in these particular areas is also something that America can't deny. Whether it be the distribution of rap and now the fact that it's localized in every other city in Europe and Africa, and they're getting their own number ones and their own big, to the point where we've seen the stats, like there hasn't been a number one album in 2023 or single from rap since, and rap's been on the decline slightly, but a lot of these things are here to kind of show us that look, they're ready to be a lot more accepting because A, there's also no choice, but 2, here are some new flavors. People want to dance now. People want to dance while they're watching something. People want to learn new languages. People want to travel more. They're so interested in what else is outside of these major markets that it's giving us opportunities to kind of come in, and people want the flavors, man. Like my last recent trip to LA during this stint was probably one of my most successful, just based on not only people that I was in with, but the conversations I was having,
right.
and the tune of the conversations are very different now, and it's to the point of, yes, they still hold the capital and the majority share, but the ears are now a lot more wide open because they understand, okay, not only do we need to be here for the next 10 years, how do we contribute to this moving forward in this, this thing ever growing.
Casey, I've got to say, it's been a sparkling conversation. The one thing I need to ask you before we wrap up is, what's next? Where do you see it all going?
Honestly, man, I see myself still getting my hands dirty. I still, I think I'm so in love with this thing and this process and these sounds that it's something I'm going to do for the rest of my life. But one of the things I can speak on moving forward, there's a few other initiatives that I'm going to keep to myself, but, is providing opportunities for, producers like writers like myself and other artists to get into and to get access to spaces within television and film that they otherwise wouldn't, because, there isn't anyone to either be a bridge or a catalyst into that. And, part of my publishing company, which, running with your bro, son rather, is one of the biggest aims for that, as well as trying to create and think about alternative forms of recoupment, whether that be in Web3 or NFT, as well as still doing your standard songwriting and recording. Absolutely,
royalties, right?
100%. So, that's one of the main things that are next, and I'm getting my hands really dirty in that, and really relearning, which is quite cool. These new skills, and hopefully being the thing that I needed when I first got introduced to deals and publishing, all of that, and just being a clog in the wheel in this massive industry, man.
Well, your cog is growing ever greater, my friend. From one generation to the next, thank you. Long may it continue. Casey, bless you for being a part of this Google series, and all good luck.
Absolutely. Can I also just say as well, thank you for also being a pioneer. Just you and your generation, like
Bless you.
From you to Dad to Tim to Aunt Karen to all of you guys. Like it really was because of you guys, and we don't give the flowers enough to the older generation because we think that we've done it the first time, but actually we do stand on the shoulders of giants, and you have done such incredible work, man. Thank you for everything.
No, bless you,
bro.
and let me throw that back at you and say that the joy we get is it's these conversations, it's seeing those successes, it's seeing what is possible.
Yeah.
You know, and that's where the heart is filled and the soul feels full. So you know what? Thank you again for doing what you're doing, because that's why we were doing it, right?
Yeah, true. It's true.
And we're out.